Okay. Hi, everyone. Good morning. I am I'm Saurabh Maria from I'm from New Delhi. I am Regional Director GTH DNA and DNAforAsia. So I'm happy to host all of you on this webinar. Um, if you can, we are having some technical difficulties. We are being joined by our first guest, Sheriff Harron, but we're not able to get his video. However, we are lucky enough to have him here, of course, and he will be making a presentation pretty soon. But before that, what I would like to do is I would just like to make some brief remarks. If you can just hold on. I would like to say at the outset that this is a part of our webinar series 2024 DNAforAsia Webinar Series, and this has been brought to you by GTH DNA as part of our mission to help countries build a strong forensic DNA ecosystem with quality labs, trained investigators, and cutting-edge technology backed by effective government policy in the field of DNA. We continue to provide a learning platform for criminal justice and humanitarian professionals in the Asia-Pacific region so that they can benchmark their DNA capabilities with the best in the world, of course. As a testament to the value this creates, both Royal Thai Police and the Philippine National Police have officially joined us as partners in this initiative, and we would like to thank them again. Our focus today would be on transforming criminal and humanitarian investigations in Asia with rapid DNA technology. As you all know, rapid DNA is fast emerging as a very powerful crime-fighting and humanitarian identification tool around the world, transforming the investigative process and providing leads in initial critical hours. In Asia, especially with growing DNA database programs, which have been helping our regional law enforcement agencies solve not just violent crimes, but increasingly even property crimes. Officers are well positioned now to use rapid DNA to enhance their investigative abilities multifold, which empowers them to take swift and decisive action. I would particularly like to underline how Royal Thai Police, Philippine National Police, Indonesian National Police, and of course, Singapore. These are some of the countries which have started building their rapid DNA programs. This webinar features two expert speakers. We will hear from Sheriff Fred Harron from Bucks County, Pennsylvania, US. His department is a pioneer in setting up and running a successful local rapid DNA program, one of the first in the US. And I'm sure we can learn much from his experience. We will then hear from Mr. Tim Shelberg, President, DNA Consulting, who has been closely tracking the policy development and implementation of rapid DNA technology in law enforcement, border security, and humanitarian applications. So he'll give you a macro view of where this technology is going. Remember, this is an interactive session where we want to give you the valuable opportunity to ask questions you may have about rapid. Please feel free to type in your questions in the chat box during the session. The speakers will take them after their presentations. Let us know in the chat if you'd like to ask the questions yourself, and I will try to enable your audio. Without taking much more time, I will now request Sheriff Harron to begin his talk. I apologize again for the video issue, but I'm sure you will find his content a lot more interesting. Over to you, Fred.
Thank you very much. Let me see. Is my PowerPoint up on the screen? Because I'm not seeing it.
Yeah, just hold on.
Okay, there we go.
Yeah.
Okay. Now we got it. Thank you, and thanks for having me. It's almost,
Fred, just hold on for a second.
yeah.
I don't see your presentation, so just hold on. I'll just 1 second. Yes, can you share it? Hold on.
You got it?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
1 second. I've got your presentation. If you can just, I will just be enabling the chat as well.
Okay. Sorry, everyone.
No problem. No problem. Okay, you can carry on now.
Okay, thank
Fred.
you, and thank you everyone for attending. It's about 10:30 p.m. here in Pennsylvania, in the U.S. So it's probably better that you can't see me anyway. But I am in uniform, all expecting to be live with you all. So I apologize for the camera not functioning, but I was able to visit and do some presentations in Singapore, I guess right before COVID, and what a great country, and had a great time there. Would love to come back again someday. But I want to just talk for, I guess, about the next half hour or so on what we've been doing with DNA here in Pennsylvania, and specifically my department, and also the use of rapid. So for those of you, oh, all right, it's not advanced. Oh, there we go. There we go. So just so you get a familiarization as we're talking where I am, you can see the red dot here in Pennsylvania. So I am in the southeastern part of Pennsylvania, bordering the city of Philadelphia, which is one of the fifth largest cities in the United States, and has a pretty substantial crime rate in Philadelphia. And a lot of that flows over into my county, or my municipality. So just you hear me talking back and forth. I was the police chief in what we'll talk about, Bensalem Township, up until 2 years ago, and then I became sheriff for the entire county. So I'm still Bensalem was within the county that I am the sheriff, the head law enforcement officer in that particular county. So you'll hear me transgression back and forth. So just so you get a feel for where I am. Our county is shaped like Italy. This is important. It's very narrow, but very long. It's about an hour and a half drive from south to north. And I am all the way, my township where I was the chief, now I'm the sheriff of the entire county, was that brown area on the lower part of the county to the left. So it takes almost an hour and a half to drive from south to north. It's a pretty good sized county with about 626,000 residential people that live there, and about 1.4 million people during the daytime. And again, as I said, borders Philadelphia, Trenton, some major cities dealing with some crime issues in the Pennsylvania area. Our county has about 39 police departments with about just under 1,000 sworn officers in the county, and that comes into play as we talk. So why are we doing this? Why are we looking at DNA? You're going to hear me talk about it as an investigative tool. We're not using it as the end all, got all. You get a DNA hit back on somebody and you're going out and slapping handcuffs on an individual. This is an investigative tool, and you're going to hear the benefits that we're finding utilizing DNA every day. But I'd like to throw this statement out there. This is from Bill Bratton, who was the police commissioner twice in New York City, the largest city and police department in the United States. And the commissioner said this: knowing your assailant will be caught is a lot less comforting to a citizen than the confidence they won't be attacked in the first place. And what does that mean? It's whatever you're doing, whether you're in a lab or whether you're in law enforcement or an administrative in law enforcement, or you're a beat cop. This is what our job is all about. it's about preventing the crime, not necessarily arresting individuals that commit crime, but preventing crime. By arresting people, we're going to be able to prevent crime. So here in Pennsylvania, when we started, and I'm going to go over a timeline back in 2010, and Rapid wasn't available, for us, for civilian law enforcement in 2010. It didn't become available until about 2017. But we started doing local databasing outside of CODIS, and I'm sure you're all familiar with our national database. But in Pennsylvania, it was taking 18 months, not 18 days, not 18 weeks, not 18 hours. It was taking 18 months to get DNA results from the state lab. Well, that's like not getting results at all. And with that, you're not preventing any crime. You're certainly not making an arrest, arresting criminals that committed crime, but you're also not preventing crime. And that's the mantra that we live by here in Bucks County. This one statement, and you'll see it again at the closing. But I think it's very important. I like to share it because I think it really is why we're all doing this job. But here in my county, unlike Philadelphia, in my county, I'm not faced with violent crimes. I'm not faced with a lot of whodunit homicides or whodunit sexual assaults. The sexual assaults that we get here, most of them are knowns. They're boyfriends or family members, relatives, things of that nature. And the homicides, we just had a homicide yesterday, and the homicides also are known people. Or a lot of times family members. And that's what the government labs are processing DNA. They're working on the big crimes because they're so bogged down and they're so understaffed. We're working on the property crimes. And you can see just from our numbers, our property crimes, what we call Part 1 crimes, our major crimes and our major property crimes, 86% of them in Pennsylvania are property. Only 14% of them are violent crimes. But yet the 14% is where the state labs are spending most of their time because they don't have enough people to do the job. They're great scientists working in there. They just don't have the folks to do the job. And that's why we've had to look to other means to solve crime and to use crime tips using DNA as an investigative lead. And that's what's really been so positive for us. And you're going to see some incredible results, some dramatic crime reduction numbers, and some real cases that we've worked here. So again, a brief history line for me. I was presented with this idea in the fall of 2009. We started local databasing outside of CODIS, outside of the national database in 2010. We had all 39 police departments on board in 2015. January of 2017, Donald Trump becomes president of the United States. And in March of 17, the president signed the Rapid DNA Act, and we went online. We went online with Rapid DNA. We were the first police department in the United States to deploy Rapid, the Thermo Fisher instrument, 24/7, 365 days a year. We had it's operational on a Wednesday in December at 3 o'clock in the morning. A neighboring county, you'll hear me talk about it a little later, a neighboring county came online in September 2017. We have other counties now are surrounding us. And in February of 21, we joined forces with the city of Philadelphia. And you're going to see some amazing, amazing results as the 5th largest city in the United States. You're going to see some amazing results with the use of local databasing and Rapid. The focus of the program was simple. We had all sworn personnel trained in processing crime scenes for DNA. And we adopted a new philosophy using DNA every day as an investigative tool. And that's bolded and highlighted in red for a specific reason. Again, it's just an investigative tool that we use it for. It's not the end all God all, but the people that we arrest by receiving DNA hits, they all confess. We get a lot of confessions from folks once we tell them they have their DNA. The officers, once we have their DNA, officers and investigators play a huge role. Detectives and supervisors are all trained in the utilization of the Rapid instrument. The Rapid instrument, I say, is cop proof. It's like as easy as operating a microwave in the coffee break room. It's very, very simple to use. It's very police friendly. We recover DNA about 95% of the time when crimes reported. I mean, we're getting a lot more DNA than we ever got on fingerprints. I'm not saying that we're utilizing this instead of fingerprints, but it's just another great tool to utilize. we talk about a blind hit. You're going to hear this as I talk for the next half hour or so. A blind hit really is a case where there's zero solvability, that the case remains open. There's really nothing to follow up on. We have no active leads, no camera footage, no witnesses, and the only investigative information we have is maybe DNA at the scene. So you're going to hear this word blind hit. I just wanted to kind of define it. Our ground zero, our first hit, was when we first started this project, utilizing DNA every day, was we had 5 suspects in custody for drug possession, not drug dealing, just drug possession. They were in the back of a police transport van. A patrol officer made the arrest. When we took them out of the van and took them into the holding cells, there was a search of the van, the police van, subsequent to the removal of the prisoners, as we always do for safety and to make sure there's no contraband or weapons left behind. And we find crack files left behind. Of course, we asked the individuals whose crack files there were. Everybody said that wasn't theirs. In Pennsylvania, they could have all been arrested on what we call constructive possession, meaning they could have possessed that crack, because the officer would testify that there was no drugs in the van before they got there, and now there's drugs. Well, we ran all 5 of them, took their DNA, and we were able to get DNA off the crack baggies, and we were able to put it on one individual. So instead of 5 people getting arrested, the right person got arrested, and 4 people got let go. Kind of excluded, exonerated, and we're going to talk about exoneration in a little bit, because I think that's a huge part of this program. It's not just about arresting people and preventing crime. It's also about making sure that innocent people don't go to jail. And you know what? I certainly believe, and one could certainly make the argument, that that's probably more important than arresting criminals, because you don't want to ever put somebody in jail that's innocent of a crime. Collections. We use
Fred,
here in Pennsylvania.
Sorry to break you off, but can you speak a bit slowly? Our interpreters
Sure.
are finding it a bit difficult to follow you, but that's your content is great, so please carry on.
I will go. I normally go a lot faster, so I'm trying to go slow anyway, but I'll see. I'll go even slower.
No problem. Thank you.
No problem. So here in Pennsylvania, we're a convicted felon state. So what that means is that you can only by mandatory statute take DNA at time of a conviction for a felony. Conviction, not arrest. So we are in the process of changing the laws. We have a bill actually coming out of the Senate now that's going to come up for a vote, and I think it's going to fly. I think we're going to get this passed. But I'm not waiting for legislators to do the right thing. At least here in the United States, if we did that, we'd be spinning our wheels in the mud all the time. So we developed a form with our prosecutor's office, whatever you call them, attorney general, your prosecutors, your district attorney, whoever that person is, the head prosecutor in your town, in your county, in your country, whoever that individual is, to get DNA by consent. And we've had about a 94% rating of people giving us their DNA voluntarily. And why do people give us, an officer that makes a car stop, and why do they give you consent to search their trunk when they know they have 7 kilos of cocaine in the back? I don't know. I have my suspicions. They think the cops are going to search anyway, so they try to just cooperate. With DNA, I think they feel like they watch television, the same U.S. television that we watch, and they see different shows. And there's no shows, about burglaries. There's only shows about sexual assaults and homicide. And these people are property crime criminals, and they're burglars, and they're lower level crimes. So they give us their DNA free and willing, and they don't realize that we're running against every crime that we've come in contact with, and then we're hitting on all these different crimes. We use it for arrest and prevention. I told you exclusion, elimination, exoneration, identification. We'll talk about a quadruple homicide that we had back in July of 2017, just a couple of months after we utilized the instrument. Disaster recovery. Thank God that we haven't had that here in the Philadelphia region. Our friends to our south in Florida have used it for disaster recovery. And again, as I've said so many times already, an investigative tool. Am I going slow enough right now?
Yes, that's fine, Fred. Please carry on.
All right. So here's the consent form that we use. And I just want to get into some cases, but I think this is important. We read this to an individual. I freely and voluntarily consent to provide a DNA swab sample to only be used for the purposes of criminal investigations. I have been advised I have the right to refuse permission to obtain the sample at any time. I have also been advised that if I provide a sample, I may have it removed from the database upon my request. If I do refuse, I know the officer may apply for a search warrant or a court order prior to obtaining the sample. I know that any evidence seized will be used against me in a criminal prosecution. And we've had this consent form challenged in court and upheld. And we have not lost one case utilizing this. Now, rapid, as I told you before, it takes us, or it was taking us, about 18 months to get DNA processed, if they even processed it here in Pennsylvania. Now, with the onset of rapid, we're getting it done in 90 minutes. The search within a couple of minutes and criminals off the street immediately. It just gets the buccal swab into the instrument. The XML file gets uploaded into our database, searches against other criminals or other crimes that we have had, and basically gives you, an indication whether or not we have a suspect or we have a match, and then we take it from there. You've probably all seen pictures of the instrument. It's pretty simple. We actually just unpacked one today. We ordered 2 more machines, 2 more instruments came in, and we have them deployed in the middle of the county and the northern part of the county, because the one that we have since 2017 is in the southern part of the county, in the municipality where I was a chief at. Rapid, pretty good, using cheek swabs, blood, saliva, cigarette butts, chewing gum. So you can get it off evidence, and we could do buccal swabs. So, and that is just growing and growing and growing. We kind of talked about that. This is extremely important, especially for some of the naysayers or doubters, and even some lab folks. We have never had a DNA profile from the rapid instrument differ from the profile that we sent to the lab for a confirmation test. Never a different result. And I got to stress, this is not in lieu of getting rid of a lab. This has to be worked in conjunction with your lab. This program does not work without a laboratory. You need those experts in the lab to help you through this. You need the experts in the lab to do the confirmation testing. The instrument gives you real-time, on the street, investigative leads that you just can't get from the lab at 3 o'clock in the morning on a Wednesday or a Saturday or a Sunday. But you need that lab. You cannot do this. So don't think for 1 minute that we're advocating or suggesting, nor could you just do something like this without your laboratory. Let's get into some fun. Let's have some fun and get into some cases. I'm just gonna, don't worry about the numbers. I'm gonna call it out by colors. So the red box in the top right, a stolen vehicle report was taken from a local municipality in our county. In box number 2, the orange box on the lower right-hand side, a vehicle, that vehicle was found unoccupied. DNA evidence was recovered from the vehicle and uploaded into our local database. In the green box, an arrest was made, and an arrest was made of a male involved in another vehicle theft. In the blue box, that individual's DNA was taken, put into the rapid machine, and it hit to the other vehicle, the red box. So in old style policing, we probably would never have got this individual to go for the other stolen vehicles because we did not know there was any connection. The computer, the machine, the instrument, the science did all the work for us. That science did the work, the DNA, which was irrefutable, and the individual wound up confessing once he realized that we had his DNA from the other job. And that was in 90 minutes. Our state lab, probably because it was just a stolen vehicle, it wasn't high on the crime totem pole, if you will, it wasn't a big deal crime, would have never processed this. But now we were able to get a process, and we were able to get somebody that was stealing at least 2 cars that we know of off the street. This one is even, this is an individual stealing from a local grocery store. You don't have to worry about the words. Stealing from a local grocery store. In the top box, in December, he stole from a grocery store, and as he was leaving the grocery store, he dropped a plastic bag. They wound up taking that plastic bag and processing it for DNA, getting it into our local databasing. And then about 5-6 months later, that individual committed another crime, another theft from his grocery store. An arrest was made. The officer collected DNA from the individual, put it into the rapid machine, and he hit to the other retail theft. Now, you would say, well, grocery store thefts aren't really a big deal, but you know what? People just don't commit two crimes. They're people stealing from stores, are many times doing burglaries. And what is it all about? For us here in the US, most of these folks that are doing these kind of crimes, it's to support their drug addiction. So it's just bigger than just one little crime. Another example, an investigation of sale of prescription pills at a local motel. We were able to get packaging and swab the DNA bottles in the packaging, get it into our local DNA base. And we had a suspect of the crime. We would put him into the rapid machine, and he hit to those other drugs. Vehicle theft. We had a multi-jurisdictional, numerous municipalities, towns were getting work vans broken into, tools stolen. You know, in over 500,000, $500,000 worth of tools. We wound up arresting a suspect for a couple of jobs within this 9-month period. And when we put him in the rapid machine, he hit to all these other thefts. And again, it wound up during the interview that it was to support his opioid addiction. Now, we've talked about a stolen car. We've talked about stealing from a grocery store. We talked about stealing from vans. Now let's talk about 11 armed robberies, point of gun. From April to June, this is a couple years back, from April to June, we had 11 armed robberies, 7 in Pennsylvania, 4 in New Jersey. One in Pennsylvania, he had left his sweatshirt behind. We were able to get DNA off that sweatshirt. And then in June of 2019, he wound up getting into a confrontation with an undercover police officer. The individual was shot during the commission of that robbery. He lived. We were able to get his DNA, and it hit to the other robberies. So now we're talking about a major crime, 11 armed robberies that spanned 2 states. And the last armed robbery, we weren't able to put the other cases on him up until this point. He wound up, being shot by a police officer. And these cases just continue. A burglary and vehicle theft suspect, we hit to a crack pipe in the vehicle and blood on the window of an entry point of a home in which the person broke it into. And you could see another case where a reference sample of a vehicle theft suspect hit to a beer can and a steering wheel column of a stolen vehicle. And these things are just over and over. I know I'm being mindful of time as we have some more interesting stuff to cover. And these crimes, this is just not 1 or 2. And I think the PowerPoint will be available for you. But these cases just go over and over and over again. We continue to get these cases. Burglaries, thefts from vehicles. This just continues. It's the same MO over and over again. This case, I want to talk about this for a few minutes. This was an exoneration. We had an elderly woman that was sexually assaulted. Pretty coherent. She identifies the individual that sexually assaulted her. She's about, I think, 79, 80 years old. She says it's so-and-so. He is a boyfriend of a young lady that lives in her complex, her apartment complex. He is seen on video in the area. He has no alibi. He is a convicted sex offender already, and she positively identifies him. He's arrested. He winds up saying, most criminals will wind up confessing after a certain period of time, just after some questioning. But he proclaims his innocence. Well, he goes to jail. I think it's a Thursday or a Friday. The detectives go back up to interview him. They come and they said, something does not seem right with this guy. I said, well, what do you mean? We got a positive identification on him. They're like, we think there's something up here that it's possible he might not have done this. So we buccal swab the suspect. Now he's already in jail for this crime. And we wind up getting DNA from the victim and also from a coffee cup that was in her apartment that she said he drank from. Well, guess what? It was not him. We wound up getting him out of jail. She goes on to accuse 2 more people. Anyway, we didn't arrest them. We then find out from her family, and her son was an FBI agent. You think it would have been nice if they told us beforehand that she suffers from some severe mental health issues. So here was a case that if there was not DNA, this guy would have probably done a serious amount of time in jail for a crime he did not commit this time. So we're using it for exclusion and exoneration. July of 2017, 4 young boys go missing in about a 4-day period. 19, 18, 21 years old. To make a very long story short, we develop a suspect, and his family, they live in our town here, but his family has, remember I told you the county's pretty long, about 40 minutes from here. His family has about a 40-acre or 80-acre farm area. They're not farming it now, but it's a pretty open space area. So we want to, detectives are led to that area, but it's a huge area to search. In a barn, they find some blood stains on the back of a backhoe in the farm, in the barn of the farm belonging to the parents of the suspect. We actually drive the DNA down to our lab. Now, remember, we just got the instrument. So we have a quadruple homicide, 4 people killed. I don't think the district attorney was willing to put all his eggs in one basket, utilizing the instrument at the time. But what he did utilize is the instrument for identification. Jumping ahead, we find 3 of the bodies, and they're burned, they're beaten, their faces are not, you cannot identify them. We're able to go to their houses and get toothbrushes out of their houses, and through utilizing the toothbrushes and the coroner taking buccal swabs of their mouth, we will identify who was who. The 4th body was buried about a half-mile away, and the DA did not want to, at the time, not be able to tell the parents we recovered some, but not all, and we don't know who is who. So the DA really wanted to get these young boys identified before telling the parents anything. So what is the value of that? I can't begin to imagine, to be able to identify these kids, to give parents some closure. So here it is being used for identification purposes. So it was before COVID, we tried this project and it kind of died. And then during COVID in 2021, we partnered with the city of Philadelphia because they have a huge database, their eldest, their local database within CODIS. So Philadelphia County, Bucks County, Montgomery County, and now Chester County, I got to add them on there, just came on board. And we're able to do our DNA comparison against Philadelphia's DNA for the people that they, at crime scenes and people that they're arresting. And we're putting them into our rapid instrument immediately. So I just want to take a look at the first 20 cases that we had. 17 cases, evidence to reference. We got hits on 2 homicides in Philadelphia that hit to a retail theft, somebody stealing from a store, like a Walmart or a box store that sells stuff. Hit to 2 homicides in Philadelphia. Narcotics violation and firearms and domestic assaults and sexual assaults in Bucks County hit to 11 rapes, 11 sexual assaults in Philadelphia. We had some people picked up from warrants and narcotics violations, hit to 4 additional cases in Philadelphia, including robberies, burglaries, and vandalism. 3 evidence to evidence cases hit to a 2013 sexual assault in Philadelphia. And that was a 2020 attempted vehicle theft in Bucks County was that case. That evidence hit to that. So these are cases that are related to one another. Another 2013 sexual assault in Philadelphia and a 2015 sexual assault in Philadelphia, all heading to stolen vehicle cases and vehicle theft cases in Bucks County. So little crimes, we know this, turn into big crimes. I'm just trying to be mindful of time. I think we're very close. So these are just more cases that we've talked about. I said we have only 3 CODIS labs in Pennsylvania. Philadelphia PD has 1, Allegheny, which is Pittsburgh, on the other large city on the other side of the state, and the other 1,100 plus police departments use one CODIS lab with an 18-month turnaround. Most of America is like us here in Bucks County. There's only 69 major cities in the United States out of 17,000 police departments. Local people commit local crime. Our criminals stay in our neighborhoods. Not many of them are CODIS hits. We talked about Pennsylvania already. What did we do to get this started? I brought in what I call the real inner circle, the people that I know can make this project work. We got elected officials on board. One of them, this is not something to hide. This is not something to, not some top secret police thing. We told everybody about it. There was nothing to hide. It's science. You can't argue it. It's science. The prosecutor's office to get policies together, very important to get them on board and make sure that we have a policy. I sit on the FBI committee. We have actually a meeting, I think one of the meetings tomorrow, to develop guidelines for utilizing rapid. There's not a lot of rules right now in the United States utilizing this instrument. And I really think there should be a lot more rules before this gets destroyed somewhere. Training, and more training. How you sell it? This is an easy sell. One less victim in the world. And what's the cost of not implementing it? What's the cost of not doing it? What's the cost of preventing someone from being a victim of a crime, of a sexual assault, of a robbery, of a burglary? What's the cost of not being able to identify, 4 missing boys? And it's science. This is science. It can't be negotiated. You can't talk yourself out of it. It's science. And it's the new policing style. Now we're using artificial intelligence. Drones are everywhere. DNA is the new fingerprint. The U.S. Supreme Court already made that decision back in 2013. And we're seeing some great crime reduction. Let me just share you those numbers real quick. Right now in our local database here in Bucks County, we have over 56,000 profiles. Again, we were looking at property crime, but we're hitting violent crimes too, and a lot of narcotics violations. So what are the numbers? This is the next 3 slides are really the nuts and bolts here. We saw a 42% reduction in our township of burglary. Our county saw a 25% reduction. And a lot of people said, well, crime is down across the United States in general. Well, it was only a 4.5% reduction in burglary in the U.S. when I saw a 42% reduction. That's a pretty substantial difference. We saw the following year a 65% reduction in burglary and a 51% reduction in robbery and a 46% reduction in auto theft. Forcible rape was down 55%, and our total Part 1 crimes were down 16% of our major crimes. That's pretty substantial. I'm not going to go over that one case just for time's sake. This is my DNA profile. This is me. I don't know who's on the call. There's over 100 people on the call. If there's any scientists on or lab folks, this might mean something to you. It means nothing to me. But there's nothing you can do with my DNA profile. You can't do anything with it. It doesn't tell you anything about it, about me. All we identify, as you all know, is whether it's a male or female. The cops, we use the term junk DNA. It doesn't tell me where I'm from. It's not telling me. We're not looking at paternity testing. I don't know if I'm predisposed to any illness. Doesn't tell you that I'm blue-eyed and right-handed. Doesn't tell you that, I was born in, or not, my ancestry is from Russia. It doesn't tell you any of that. It just tells you that I'm a male. So there's nothing really spectacular about it to the average person. Some DNA myths. A lot of people say we're doing profiling. Not true. Genetic information, well, that's actually changing. That we're making a DNA hit list, not true. That we're getting it by trickery, by surreptitiously, not true. We're not doing that either. And we're not doing it by coercion. The good thing about criminals is if you don't get them today, you'll get them tomorrow. And don't forget, folks, it's just an investigative tool. I think we're really low on time here. Getting the officers to buy in. Once the cops see that it's actually working and we're getting criminals off the street, they're an easy sell. Got to make sure that you have great police and lab relations. I can't stress that enough. Funding is a challenge and expanding the program. What's next? Well, as much as you want to use it for. I actually proposed a project to the Senate Armed Services Committee. It didn't really go over too well. because we have still a substantial amount of missing in action, even from World War II. So I had an idea and it just didn't fly in Washington. But I'll bring that back for another day. And of course, child identification, I think that's next to come with this as well. Where we used to use fingerprints, I think the DNA identification, we started doing that here. And utilizing, I think Tim's going to talk about on immigration issues as well. And our local databasing, which is really taken off. Endless. Whatever you could think, any way to prevent crime, solve crime, help people, identify individuals, the possibilities are endless with this technology. Folks, don't forget what Bill Bratton said, knowing your assailant will be caught is a lot less comforting to a citizen than the confidence they won't be attacked in the first place. Okay, I went through that fairly quickly. So I hope everybody got some stuff out of that. That is my my phone number, my cell number. Feel free. That's I guess the US is 1 first, and then my email address. Feel free, please, whenever I do any of these lectures or presentations, I always get a couple of emails. I think it's great for people to reach out. Love to come back to Singapore. Great country. So please feel free to reach out to me, and I guess we'll take some questions, right?
That's right, Fred. Thanks for accommodating. I know there is a language issue for some people, but our interpreter is I think is doing a great job. There are a few questions. First, from Mr. Abdul Rashid Muningin. So what he asks is his question is on the quadruple homicide. So he asks that are you relying solely on DNA evidence and DNA database in your quadruple homicide investigation?
No. The quadruple homicide was in July of 2017. If you remember, we just got the instrument in March. It was fairly new in the United States for civilian law enforcement. I know the military has been using it for a long time, but we did not. He used it really. We had a suspect through other investigatory means, but we did not have the bodies identified. And when we found the blood in the barn, we were able to know that that blood belonged to one of the 4 boys. I actually forget which boy at the time now, but he used it really as an investigative tool, some leverage, and they wound up getting a confession. There were 2 people convicted of those homicides. It was not an end-all, got-all. If we did not get a confession, and if that's all he had, there was some other evidence because the one suspects took one of the boys' cars and it was hidden on the property. We found that. One of the boys was a diabetic and his insulin was found on the property. So there was some other evidence in that case. But at the end of the day, once the DNA was collected, we were able to get a confession from both boys and they wound up pleading guilty. He took the life sentence. At that time, we had death penalty in Pennsylvania, although we haven't put anybody to death forever. But the governor now has taken the death penalty off the table. But he took the death penalty off the table to get the location of the 4th boy. Remember, I told you it was a half mile away. So the DNA truly in this case was an investigatory lead. We did not use that as the end all got all because it was just too new. And we had other evidence as well.
Great. Thank you, Fred. Another question from Sarah Abbas this time. She asks that are you analyzing trace evidence via rapid DNA technology, or is it just reference samples right now? And I'm sure you can clarify this.
Reference samples, however, chewing gum, blood, saliva, semen, and tobacco, we put into the instrument too. So we could use that. It cannot be utilized for touch DNA. So you cannot use it on windowsill, touch DNA. And that's why for us, it's a 2-pronged project. That's why we utilize another lab in Lorton, Virginia to do our touch DNA. So we utilize that lab and we utilize the rapid instrument. together. There used to be a commercial here in the U.S. For Reese's peanut butter cups. If you're familiar with the candy, chocolate and peanut butter, and you mix it together, and it's a beautiful thing. I actually don't like peanut butter, but so I think these two products go very well together. But we do not use it for touch DNA. It cannot be used for that at this time.
Right. So actually, that's quite interesting, and I think we have more questions on that. Do you mean is there a trend that now rapid DNA is getting more and more sensitive to trace evidence and also other kinds of evidence that earlier was probably difficult to analyze?
Yeah, because even in the beginning, we were really only doing buccal swabs, and now the technology, and I know probably Tim could speak better than I. I just been a cop for 38 years. I'm not a scientist. That's why you got to partner with the scientists and the lab folks. But I think in the future, it's going to be able to do touch DNA. I think that's, it's definitely, something that's on the horizon. When we started in 2010 with local databasing, people were scared to death of genealogy. And I had told people publicly, we won't use it for genealogy. Well, that was 14 years ago. Things have changed. So what I said 14 years ago is not true anymore. We are using it for genealogy. The science has just changed, and the availability of genealogists now are a lot more prevalent than they were 14 years ago. And it's more, and you can afford it now, where back then it was very, very expensive. So, things do change. So I think eventually, and again, this is just my opinion for what it's worth, I think eventually you're going to see it with touch DNA as well. And that'll be a game changer. And for us here in Pennsylvania, I think Tim's probably much more versed than I am. I believe there's only 2 states right now that have piloted rapid for reference samples into CODIS, into the CODIS database. It's Louisiana, and I don't know who. I think the other one might be Florida. I'm not sure, but Tim certainly knows better than I. This is certainly his expertise. But I think you're going to start seeing that spread more and more and more.
No problem. So I have an interesting question, and I don't know, I don't know if you can handle this, but I'll just put it out. Nakshatra from Malaysia says that she's researching the potential of chiloscopy, lip prints, and he wants to know if lip prints are commonly found. Evidence in your experience? She's looking into DNA extraction from these lip prints. So quite interesting. But like you said, probably a question for a scientist.
Yeah, I mean, definitely a question for a scientist. I could tell you right now, we have not gotten DNA into rapid off of a lip print. But I imagine, as a layman, the lip print, if you're collecting saliva off the lip, then you could utilize it. But we have not, if you can get the saliva off of that from the lip, then you could put it into rapid. But we have not had any cases that we've used a lip print.
Got it. There's another investigative question from Ish Anand. So the question is, what are the other corroborative evidences you use along with DNA for conviction of an accused?
Yeah, a great question. And, again, for those that are on the call, they're in law enforcement, they certainly will understand this. I don't think it matters. A human is a human is a human. It doesn't matter. A criminal is a criminal is a criminal, no matter what country they're from. And what we wind up, once the bad guy or gal knows, once the criminal, the suspect knows that we have their DNA and it's a match, we get confessions. I mean, a lot of them, they just don't play games with you. And once they realize that you got them, we get, confessions. Now with door cameras and video surveillance and the cell phones, we're now capturing the callers. Now in our county, we have video 911, where the 911 caller can send us their video live of a crime in progress. So we're starting to use all this other technology. I can't imagine what the next 5 to 10 years is going to bring, but the DNA has been a game changer for us. The crime reduction numbers that we started to see in the last 5-6 years have really been the only major change we have had in the way we do business is DNA. but it's just that investigative lead. And a lot of it is just confessions. We still use a lot of video footage. We still use fingerprints. We still use, eyewitness accounts, but the DNA is solid. I mean, there's just no refuting it. And we've had that form challenged one time in court, which was upheld, but we have not had any real trials that we've had to put on this DNA evidence. Once the defense attorney knows we got the DNA and the person wound up confessing, it's game over.
Got it. We have another question, and good to see questions rolling because this is the main objective of this exercise. From Kirsty Hines, I hope I got the pronunciation right. How do you ensure reproducibility at the forensic lab with limited samples? Have there been any instances that the DNA evidence was depleted on rapid instrument? And what are the implications for the case?
Great question. And I apologize for not covering that. And it's in our, I said there's very few rules regarding this, but in the FBI protocols, it is recommended. And what we started doing back in 2017, always an A and a B swab. And if we only get one swab, it's never for the instrument, it's always for the lab. So always an A and B swab, and we never get everything consumed with the instrument.
Great. Yes, that's a very important issue, and
very important.
Yes, and I'm sure we can focus more on that. Fred, you already shared your email, and of course, we are always there. And if any of the participants have any questions regarding this, they can reach out to me or Fred. Just another question, and a couple of more questions, I think, and then we can let you go, Fred. I know it's pretty late where you are. One question is on buccal swabs. Now, just give me a second. So, did you start your local DNA database by just collecting buccal swabs from voluntary arrestees?
Yes. It started with because again, Pennsylvania is a convicted felon state, so we can't take DNA at time of arrest. So it's all voluntary, and we had we still have like a 94-95% compliance rate, and we were swabbing everything at crime scenes. We only swab though people that we're arresting. Or suspects if we have them for a particular crime, but not just swabbing people on ped stops or pedestrian stops, and certainly not car stops for traffic violations. We don't ask people for their DNA for arrests or somebody that we have as a suspect in a crime.
Got it. And the last question, Fred, for you, I would actually, this is a question from me because I've seen this in the region. Now, I know you are way ahead of where we are right now. We have use cases from Indonesia, Thailand, and Philippines, of course, Singapore, what the stage that we are in. I think a relevant question to ask is that we are somewhere between traditional technology, that is CE lab workflow, and did you have, in your experience, what was the learning curve and what were the learnings in these two technologies coexisting? Because a lot of questions are raised about if you have good labs, then then what is the use of rapid DNA? So yeah, if you could just throw some light on that.
Yeah, all the labs are good here. At least I know from my experience here in the U.S. It's just the labs are the government labs, the CODIS labs, are government run, and government doesn't really invest in producing a product, and people have no choice but to pay our salaries through taxes here in the United States, and I'm sure it's like that in every country. So the government has no interest if the workflow becomes greater, they don't invest more people into their labs to process the work, because 18 months turnaround it's just not acceptable for a street cop. So the rapid has a place, it mixing together with the lab. And I think the labs are starting to see that. They're starting to understand that we need results immediately. 18 months was horrible. Then we went to 30 days with a private lab, which was amazing. And then in 2017, if you told me that we can get DNA results in 90 minutes, I was flabbergasted. I just couldn't believe it. And so I think the labs are understanding that cops aren't scientists, but they need results, and investigators need results quickly, and not 18 months is not quick. And I think there's a good mesh now. And when I first started talking about this, the first presentation I gave was in 2013. And, I was new to it. I didn't really know a lot about DNA, and I didn't understand. I thought a lot of the time the labs were at fault, and I was just uninformed. And then I got more educated on it, and it's not the lab. It's just the way the system is here in the US anyway. So for Pennsylvania, there's just about 1,200 police departments in the state of Pennsylvania, in the Commonwealth, and only 3 CODIS labs. And one of those CODIS labs is only Philadelphia police. And the second lab is only Allegheny County, which is Pittsburgh, which is the second largest city in Pennsylvania. That left one lab for 1,100 and some odd police departments. Those people cannot possibly process the work expeditiously. It's not their fault. It's the government's fault for not giving them the equipment to do the job properly. So I think you're going to see more of this mesh. The lab people, they start to understand that this is not a threat to them. This is just another tool for them too. And the cops are starting to, the cops, when they see results, then they buy into it. When they see that, results that, the suspect they have in custody just hit to 3 cases, that's pretty amazing. That's stuff that when I came on in 1987, that was not even a possibility.
Great answer, Fred. And yes, I think as the volumes go up, which are only going to be going up, I think the labs and the police departments here are going to realize that there is a role for both. And I think yes, there's a lot that we can learn from your experience. I'll just allow one more question since we started a bit late. Again from Sarah Abbas. The question is, are rapid results admissible in court at this time in the US, or you always have to back up with traditional technology?
We back up when we're going to court. We back it up with the lab. We don't rely just on the rapid results. But again, it's like 98, if not higher percent. These cases are not going to court. These people are all pleading guilty. So we always back it up. That's why we do an A and B swab. So once we know a case is going to court, we have somebody in custody, we send the other swab to the lab for a confirmation sample.
Right. And I think we might be going that way. Correct me if I'm wrong, Fred, that now there's also some policy, and of course, Tim would be talking about it, but there is policy in the works which would allow for crime scene samples to actually be, uploaded into CODIS. And I think slowly the way this is going towards code acceptability in the future, maybe.
No, I think you're exactly right. And I've known, I think they're anticipating sometime, I think in 2025, or definitely by 2026. I think it's 2025 crime scene samples through rapid into CODIS. It's on the way. I mean, I don't know what the next, half a decade is going to bring, but DNA is going to be old news. It'll be what fingerprints were, some years back. But I just want to leave with this one thought, as a police executive, and again, I can't see the titles of the folks that are on the call. We never want to give up getting a cop, an investigator, a personnel. We never give that spot up, no matter what else we could buy. If I get money to put a cop on the street, I'm going to put a cop on the street first. But I will tell you, this technology is just beneath that. This is the latest and greatest. And if I could find a way to finagle the money, to move the money around to get this, I mean, we just purchased 2 more instruments here. and our neighboring counties, and this has really taken off in Pennsylvania specifically. It solves so much more crime than your star cop could ever solve. And I really, that's why we invest so much time and effort and money into it. And, in the beginning, we had a lot of doubters that didn't understand it. That's why I put my DNA profile up on the screen. It means nothing to anybody. And I just think it's the latest and greatest technology. I don't know what the future will bring, but this is it for now. And it's pretty amazing.
It absolutely is. Thanks, Fred. Thanks for fielding all those questions. And we will let you go now. But it's great to have you connected to our network here. We've had almost more than 100 people listening keenly to you, and we hope that we can continue this exchange as we go forward.
Thank you.
Great. So
take care, everyone.
Thank you, Fred. So before we go to our next speaker, I would like to show you a video, and this is again from the US. This is in fact from a state just northeast of Pennsylvania. It's Connecticut, and they have been doing some great work recently. And the idea is to actually show you what they have been doing. And here's our latest news clip that was shown in the US, and I think you'll all find it very interesting. Just give me a second.
Live. News 8 at 6 starts now.
Good evening and thanks for joining us tonight on News 8 Investigation. We have a high-tech look at Connecticut crime fighting.
Solving mysteries is nothing new to local enforcement, but how they are doing it is now a game changer. We have team coverage on this subject tonight.
We'll hear from News 8's Eva Zamaris in just a moment.
First, we start with News 8 investigative reporter Jeff Dedarian. Jeff.
Ann and Dennis, what you're about to see could be straight out of your favorite crime show on TV. But this is real. We got a first-hand look behind the scenes on how rapid DNA testing works. And if you're a criminal, this is bad news for you.
Crime fighting meets high tech, but we're getting a little ahead of ourselves. First, look at this. Farmington police chasing down a burglary suspect. Caught on dash cam and police body cam. Some of it,
you just hit O'Donnell, he's taking off.
Hard to watch and listen to. An officer in pursuit on foot.
Officer down, officer down.
Slammed into by the driver, the suspect who escaped. Well, not for long.
Officer O'Donnell got out of his cruiser to address the suspect, at which point the suspect intentionally drove at him, pinned him against his cruiser, and caused serious physical injury. Go after him.
The stolen car left behind clues to saliva loaded into something called rapid DNA to catch the suspect quickly with the help of this new technology. At the state's Division of Scientific Services, the future is right here in this lab with these fancy machines putting Connecticut on the map. Cheryl Carrero and Savasti Papakanakis. They're the scientists running the state lab.
About 10 years ago, in 2013, our lab struggled with backlogs immensely. Our turnaround time was in the years, not even months. And we've worked towards dropping our backlogs.
The machines, looking like those self-serve kiosks you see at the airport, take DNA, like blood, saliva, or a sample from someone's hat, glove, even a cigarette butt, and run it through the state's list of 128,000 convicted criminals looking for that match, with a twist.
The rapid DNA test versus the traditional testing, they're the same type of chemistries, same type of, it's going to look the same as the traditional testing. The difference is the speed.
So just how rapid is rapid DNA testing? This machine right here is a standard DNA machine. You put samples in it, 45 to 60 days later, you get results. With rapid DNA, it's 90 minutes. Results come back.
To date, about 1,000 rapid DNA tests have been performed in Connecticut, giving police a jump on literally hundreds of leads.
Out of the 1,000, we have so far sent out 250 leads, and that's about 25% of 1,000.
Meaning out of 1,000, 250 leads to law enforcement and police to then take the next step and try and work
Correct.
We're out there, we're searching for evidence.
New Haven PD has one of the machines that's been placed around the state. These two detectives, both trained and certified at the state lab. These machines can be used for murders, rapes, assaults, and...
We had a string of burglaries within the past year or so. We used it to pinpoint who was responsible and involved in those burglaries, and he was able to be taken off the street fairly quickly.
6 police departments are now equipped with the machines, costing about $135,000 each. Hartford, New Haven, Greenwich, Bridgeport, State Police Troop E in Montville, and Waterbury all have them. And it's not just used to catch bad guys.
Turns out that the sample was a lead to somebody else. And so they were able to release that person because they're now looking for another person.
How special is this in Connecticut?
We started in 2021. We were about the 3rd lab to use this technology for crime scene samples.
In the whole country?
In the whole country.
Keep in mind, this does not replace traditional DNA testing. It's just meant as a new law enforcement tool.
Oh, I can't move. Oh, I can't move.
In that real as it gets game of cops and robbers, having a scientific edge in true crime can turn a cold case into a no longer unsolved mystery.
Now, keep in mind, traditional DNA testing is still the gold standard to use in court. Rapid DNA testing, again, just gets to alleged criminals a lot quicker. Live in the studio tonight, I'm Jeff Dadarian, News 8. Now, Eva Zamaris joins us with a look at part 2 of this investigation. Eva.
Hi, I hope you enjoyed that video. And now we have Mr. Tim Shellberg to actually talk about the broader, talk about rapid DNA from a broader perspective. Over to you, Tim.
Good afternoon, everybody. Let me just start my slideshow. Good to be with you all today. I am currently, it's evening time in my hometown of Seattle, Washington in USA. And I'm going to be spending just a few minutes talking about some of the applications and policies regarding rapid DNA. And you were lucky enough to hear from Sheriff Fred Herron, who's really been a giant in rapid DNA in the United States. Because of his early involvement in rapid DNA, it's really caused the nation to start adopting rapid more quickly. The FBI is starting to push for more inclusion of rapid, and including his own state, which is now also implementing a large rapid program. So we're very happy to have Fred pushing that issue throughout the U.S. I'm with GTH DNA, as is Sarab, and we work on DNA policy and project development around the globe. We are known as experts in the area of DNA database policy, legislation, and law, and excited to start now looking into rapid DNA as well. We've worked in over 60 countries, providing information about DNA programs throughout the world for about 20 years now, and operate in all the regions. And as Sarah mentioned, he covers the Asia territories. We also operate a lot of brands. You may recognize us from that, the DNA Hit of the Year program. And but the one beneath that I just mentioned, it's called Go Rapid DNA. This is the site we use to put information about rapid DNA, and I encourage you to take a look at that at www.GoRapidDNA, where you could find various presentations and documents that might be helpful for your research into rapid. Okay, so as Fred talked about, I'll just recap. Rapid DNA is a program that tests DNA in 90 minutes. It's designed to be operated by non-laboratory personnel, but uses the same scientific methods as what's found in the lab. And as you saw, it's a very small instrument. It's basically serves to develop investigative leads. And as Fred mentioned, and our speaker in the video mentioned, it's also about exonerating the innocent. And what it is not a replacement for traditional lab-based DNA analysis, because it's not capable of doing touch DNA, as Fred mentioned. And if you have cases with a lot of mixtures, you wouldn't want to mess around with rapid on that. That should go to the traditional analysis. And as we talked about, it's not yet challenged in the US courts. That's why in the US we have this process of collecting 2 swabs, one to use in the rapid, one to keep for the lab if necessary. But what Fred says, very important. Keep in mind that if you get a hit in your rapid, it's likely to not change, and therefore the defendant is likely to plead out and admit to the crime, and therefore the lab never needs to test the B swab. So, but you need that B swab just in case you got to go to court and have the traditional analysis. And as Fred also mentioned, the best local police rapid DNA programs are those that are developed in coordination with an accredited laboratory. That's because you can operate a lot of things on your own with rapid in the police department without the lab. However, when you do need to get a interpretation of the results, which does happen, you need a trained scientist to give you that interpretation. So working with the lab to do that, that interpretation is something very important. You know, I think the big thing about rapid to me is I've looked at what's happening as many places in the US and throughout the world have started to implement rapid, is it's really poised to change police's relationship with DNA. And what I mean by that is right now it's kind of a mystery to the police. When they go to a crime scene, they collect DNA, they're trained what to do, they submit it, and it disappears, as Fred mentioned, sometimes for months and even years. They lose the relationship with that case. They forget about that case. A year later, the lab might say, oh my gosh, it matched to some offender in our database, but the policeman's moved on. They've started thinking about other cases. They're not focused on it. But with rapid DNA, they can stay in touch with that case because they know that when they take the DNA back to their office and run it on a rapid, they're going to get a match immediately rather than waiting months and even years. Therefore, changing their relationship with DNA, empowering them to collect more DNA, empowering them to exonerate the innocent and close cases. So one barometer of what's going on in the US is on new technologies is how much requests for grants goes to the United States Congress from local law enforcement agencies. And over the last 3 years, we've seen over 70 requests from police departments to Congress to fund their grants for rapid DNA. That's a lot. And here in the different colors on the map shows you the jurisdictions that have been requesting money. And we suspect that even more money will be requested over the next few years to roll out rapid throughout the United States. Okay, what I'm going to do now is talk about the various rapid DNA applications that we're finding in the United States and perhaps other places in the world as well. The first application is that of using rapid DNA to take DNA from people upon arrest. And the idea is that you would collect their DNA when they're arrested, just like a fingerprint, in the states that allow you to collect DNA upon arrest. You would test it immediately in the rapid while you're doing the fingerprints, while you're doing the other administrative paperwork. The idea being that before that offender is released back into the community after the paperwork's done, as you know, most people are released, they're not put in jail before they come back for court. You would know if the rapid hit on some crime that they're wanted for. And that's a great application for our states that collect required DNA at arrest. And on the map on the right are the states in the United States, the ones in green, that have the laws that allow you to collect DNA, not just for convictions, but when you're arrested. All right. So again, this really helps us determine if they're wanted for some unsolved crime before they're released after the booking process. Now, Louisiana was the very first state to implement this about 2 years ago. Florida has started rolling this out, and we have a number of other states that are rolling out rapid upon arrest. My guess is within the next 5 years, you'll see a number of states in the United States taking DNA upon arrest and running it through rapid immediately before they're released from arrest. Louisiana had the county of East Baton Rouge Sheriff's Office was the first jurisdiction in the United States to roll out rapid DNA at arrest in the United States. And they've had a number of hits. I'll just mention the one that it's highlighted in green. And in that case, it was the very first hit using rapid DNA at arrest in the United States. And it occurred on August 2nd, 2020. What happened before that, though, is an individual was in the state of Georgia, and he carjacked at armed gunpoint an old elderly woman, taking her car, forcing her out of the car, and stealing the car. They took DNA because they found the car, but they put it in the Georgia database and the national database, and there was no hits. All right, fast forward to 2022, August 2nd. An individual was arrested for a relatively minor crime of driving a stolen car. Because of this law and because of this program with Rapid, they took his DNA upon arrest, they put it in the Rapid machine, and within hours, they hit to this violent carjacking case 2 years earlier. Therefore, the sheriff's office did not release that individual into the community. They kept him in jail for this serious carjacking case that happened 2 years before. That's how rapid DNA at arrest will be helping solve crimes well into the future in the United States. The next applications I'm going to talk about is using rapid DNA in evidence. All right, so the most common form of rapid DNA in the United States right now is just the direct comparisons. Fred Heron that you talked with is lucky, he's got a database, but most places don't have the availability of a database when they're testing rapid on the database because it hasn't been allowed by the FBI into CODIS yet. So when most jurisdictions get a rapid, they basically just use it for this situation. You have a suspect, let's say at a burglary, and they've left blood on the window. You know that blood belongs to the suspect. You take the blood off the window and you bring it back to the police department. You run it on the rapid. Then let's say you have suspects. Somebody said, yeah, it was the kid from down the street. His name's John. And you go get his DNA and you put in that in the rapid. Within 90 minutes, you know if the kid from down the street, John, matches the blood on the window. That's how most people are using rapid DNA right now in the United States for evidence, before they have access to a database of criminal offenders. It's a great application, especially for those just getting started. Now, as I mentioned, as Fred mentioned, he has been able to create a local database based on volunteers, based on crime scenes, and therefore is allowed to compare his evidence on rapid to the volunteers that are in the database. Not many other jurisdictions do this, but Fred's been very successful in setting that up. The way that most to date have been doing evidence against a database of criminal offenders is just by evidence from a crime scene that's tested on Rapid against the state-only database of offenders, not the national CODIS database. This is because the FBI has not yet implemented the program to allow evidence to be searched into CODIS, the national database. So states have basically taken their own state database of criminal offenders and allowed evidence from police used on Rapid to be compared against that. Now, the states that do this, Connecticut was one of the first, and they have a wonderful program, and you saw that video. Arizona also has a program like this. The state of Kentucky and the state of Missouri just kicked theirs off. Oklahoma and Louisiana are soon to kick off a program too. And there's going to be a lot of matches because, as you can see on the right, there's a lot of matches in all these states to databasing. So why not use Rapid on property crimes and other crimes as well to get these types of high match hit rates in these databases of states using Rapids with evidence. Now, of course, everybody says that's great. You can do one-to-one comparisons on Rapid, and the states that have these state-only databases are great too. But wouldn't it be great if you can take evidence and in 90 minutes search it, not just against the suspects you have or against a state-only database, but search it against the second largest DNA database of criminal offenders in the world, which is the United States, at 23 million criminal offenders. We have hit rates approaching 40 and 50%. So we'd love to be able to search evidence against this database. As I mentioned, the FBI is yet to set this up, but the good news is that's about to change, and it should be changing in 2025. This is because the FBI and our SWGDAM group that sets up the rules just released the rules for searching evidence against the national database, state and national databases, just a few weeks ago in June. And they're out for public comment, and we believe that the final rules will be ready by early 2025. And at that point, each state will have to set up the program to allow the police to submit the evidence to the state CODIS, and then it will get uploaded to the national CODIS, giving us that access of an evidence sample test on Rapid to be compared to 23 million criminal offenders. We believe the first states to do this will probably be some of the states that already have these state-only databases. The state that I'm from has been planning for 2 years for this, so they might be one of the first states, but my guess is a majority of our states will have this program set up in the next 2 to 5 years. And that's really going to change the game for Rapid DNA, because you're going to have access to our very large criminal offender database. The rules that they're going to have for participating in this program, the most important rule, you got to have 2 swabs. When you go to Rapid DNA crime scene, if you can get 2 swabs from single source DNA, one goes in the Rapid, one gets ready to go to the lab if they don't plead out. And many other rules that I won't go into, but if you wanted to go onto SWGDAM website, you can read the rules that they've put out for public comment. Okay, the next application I'll talk about, and this is a good one, is victim identification. So currently, the way it works to identify victims is that you have to take the DNA from the human remains, you have to take the DNA from the family members, and it goes to the lab. And hopefully in a few days, but sometimes longer, you'll be able to confirm if the loved one is the family member you're looking for. But Rapid DNA is being used to replace this process to make it faster. And it's not just the mass big disasters we think about, like the situation on the right there, which was the collapse of the condo in Florida a few years ago, where you had hundreds of people killed without being able to identify them. But it's the simple things that happen every day in a big city. A vehicle crash where the victim's unrecognizable and the family shows up at the police station and they can't ID the body because the body's not recognizable. But you could use the rapid to test the human remains from the car and the family members right there. And you can get an answer in hours rather than having to wait days to get the answer. It's also being used a lot in areas of international conflict. In Ukraine right now, I believe there's over 70 rapid units deployed using rapid to identify these service members that are killed in action. There's also another application in the same vein is victim identification in the coroner and medical examiner's offices. When they have remains that they don't know who it is, they take the rapid, they test the remains, and they'll test family members right there as well. So great use, and a lot of jurisdictions are using this as a secondary use, because if they're not using it for police matters, they at least have this available if there is a big disaster. So that's the other application. I'm going to talk about rapid DNA being used remotely and mobilely. And I think the French gendarmerie in France really sets the stage for this application. And what they have is they have various French territories throughout the world that are on islands, and they don't have crime labs on those islands. And so what they've done is the French have brought rapid to those locations, and those devices are being used mobilely on the larger islands where they can drive them to one side of the island and the other to test evidence, and also between islands. If you have a number of islands that are close and there's ferry boats that they can put the device on those and take them to different islands. And they use this, the place where they piloted this is down in Southeast Asia, down towards you, off of Australia, New Caledonia. And they started the program there. And I believe they have more locations on islands throughout the French territories throughout the world. But I think it's really cool because, they don't have crime labs there. So if you have a crime scene, they can take the rapid to that place. They could test the evidence right there. And then they're connected to the crime lab in Paris, where they can do the interpretation of the data if there's not a clean match, and they get the answer right there. So great program, great for those remote areas where you don't have a crime lab that you can get the evidence to easily. So it'll be interesting to see if more countries start to follow that way. And I imagine places where you're from, in Philippines and Thailand, where you have a lot of islands, this would be a great application. Lastly, I'll talk about border control and immigration. And this is the idea of using rapid when you've got issues of concern that come up when people are crossing borders. And I'll just mention a few projects to kind of give you the sense of how this application works. So the US government had a problem with people bringing human trafficking victims across the US border from the southern border, where people from South America, Central America are migrating up the border. A lot of times in human smuggling and human trafficking, people will bring kids over that don't belong to them. They'll say they're their kids, but they're not. And in the cases where the border agents are suspicious of this, they put a series of rapid devices at the border, and they can take the parent DNA and the child DNA in 90 minutes, clear up any suspicion, and either stop a human trafficking incident in action or let the family pass through. Great application. We expect more of those pilots to be implemented in the coming years. Panama had a proposal that's being considered, and I think this will come up in other locations as well. The idea is that when people are migrating across borders, they typically go to a checkpoint, and for those that they're suspicious of, whether they're human trafficking, whether they are criminals, they've got really suspicious IDs with them, they might send them to a separate line for more biometrics. They take fingerprints sometimes, they take photographs, but now the idea is let's take DNA from some of those people that are suspicious. And if you use rapid, you can clear it up really quick to see if they're wanted for some unsolved crime or something else. And so I suspect we'll start seeing some of these proposals, not just in Panama, be implemented someday, but in other locations as well. Finally, a use that we've heard about is using rapid DNA in foreign embassies. People that basically say, hey, I want to take my kid with me and get a visa for them as I move back somewhere. The embassy, rather than sending that out to a private laboratory that might take weeks, you could run the DNA test right there. And while the person waits, clear up whether or not the child is yours or not, and whether or not you have the right to get them a visa to have them travel with you. So that's basically the applications I'm covering today. Hope you found that informative, and I can stay on a little bit longer for questions, Sarah, but I think we're at a very
Yes.
we're about so.
Yeah, Tim, I know just a couple of questions. I think we can manage that. So firstly, one question that we've got that we've been getting a lot, and it's a two-part question, is that since countries in this region, they are at a very at an early stage when it comes to rapid DNA programs, what are part one of the question is, what is your recommendation in terms of policy preparedness for them? What are the steps that they should take, and what policy should they have in place to ensure that they have a successful rapid DNA program, number one. The second question is, a lot of people have asked me about funding strategies. I know the funding strategies in the US are maybe somewhat different, but if you have any recommendations on how they can also they can be funding apart from government help, that'd be helpful.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'll start with the first one on implementing in the beginning stages. I think that what we've found that worked really well in the US is just getting it to experiment with one-to-one comparisons. So if you're a larger city, getting a rapid to where you could use it for a suspect to a crime scene. And that just seems to get everybody comfortable with the technology. You're not necessarily dealing with a database yet. But that's one area that I think is a good one. The second one is basically, though, you know, all the countries on today's call have databases and very mature database programs. So they have databases of crime scenes. Some have larger databases of criminal offenders than others. But I think that having a rapid in your crime lab, if you don't already have one, to run rush cases out of your CE workflow, because nothing's worse for your day in the laboratory if you all of a sudden have to stop what you're doing on your normal cases and run a rush. But why not use rapid if it's a single source and it doesn't mess with your workflow? So that's another use. To the regulations, I think the FBI is doing a great job in being very careful with rapid. And so I encourage you to look at the FBI procedures for, I think I put it in my slide deck. It's I can't remember the title, Everything You Need to Know About Rapid or something like that in the FBI rules. And you'll see rules on rapid, and then these rules that are coming out on evidence to be uploaded to CODIS are great. So again, I think the FBI rules are great, and that would be another area. And Sarah, I'm going to ask you to remind me the rest of the questions.
Thanks, Tim. The second question is about funding strategies. The way things are in the US is of course different, but if you could just advise, because that's a question that comes up a lot. Are there other funding opportunities apart from depending on government budgets?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, government budgets, your own government budgets are the where it makes the most sense and you have to prove the value. I think that, I've heard a lot of people say, if you've got a remote, let's take the Philippines, for example, with a lot of different islands, and there's proposals maybe to build satellite crime labs, but that's expensive. The buildings, the people, but if you want to use rapid DNA and not spend the money making the case that it's cheaper to use a rapid than building a lab is perhaps one strategy. For those of you that are have countries where the US or other countries, Australia, donate foreign aid for law enforcement technology, I think this is a great one. Talk to your US and Australian embassies about it, because they are donating rapid DNAs. I've seen a lot of them around the world being donated by the US Embassy to foreign countries for law enforcement. So maybe that's a strategy as well.
Great. I think that's a good suggestion, Tim. And I think we can let you go. We can close the session here. Thank you, everyone. And all I would like to say here is that we are there to help. Like I said, it is our mission to help you connect the dots and give you all the information and network support that we can, not just for rapid DNA, but also for anything to do with forensic DNA and capacity building. So we will bring the session to a close now. If you have any questions, or if any questions occur to you, please email me, email us, and you already have Sheriff Aaron's contact, so you please feel free to connect with him directly. We will endeavor to bring you more such opportunities in the future. Please send me suggestions on the topics that you would like to hear about. And we will be sharing the presentations from the speakers with you on a separate correspondence. So all I would like to say is thank you, and hope you found this session informative. And please stay in touch and have a nice day.